You saw that figure for Eric Davis against Pittsburgh, only 4 hits in 23 at-bats. Runner going. Fly ball to deep center field. McGee back. It's going to go. Why, you would think they just won the World Series.
Today on Crafting the Call, we love the 90s. We're going to sweep through the 1990s, and we're going to talk about the defining moments from each World Series. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler with the Lansing Lugnuts.
And I'm Josh Suchon with the Albuquerque Isotopes. More childhood trauma is on my way. Do we have to continue to go through all of my childhood trauma with the A's losing, Jesse?
It'll be brief. It'll be really brief because there's only 1990. We then will have 7 more World Series to go.
Only 7, sigh, because there was no World Series in 1994. When I think about baseball in the 1990s, Jesse, I think about the changes, how we went from NBC to CBS to Fox. I think about how we started with Jack Buck and we ended with Joe Buck, and we ended with the Yankees absolutely dominant, where they just always found a way to win games, no matter who their opponent was and no matter what the circumstances were.
Yeah, 2024, we've got the Dodgers and the Yankees. Well, as the 80s came to an end, the Dodgers were coming to an end. It was the A's seemingly as the big powerhouse, but this would be their last gasp in the World Series. They had just swept the Giants in 4 games in 1989. What do you think is a defining moment for you for the 1990 World Series?
Me yelling at a fan at the Oakland Coliseum in Game 4.
Yeah, sounds about right.
It was the 8th inning, and I was really mad, and some A's fan was complaining about Jose Canseco, and I turned around and started screaming at him that real fans don't desert their team at moments like this. But really, to me, it was the guy we just saw. It was Eric Davis. The expression, in order to win a World Series, you have to beat the other team's ace pitcher, or you have to beat the other team's ace reliever. And preferably, you have to do both of those things if you're going to win a World Series.
Well, it got late, and the Reds beat the Eck. Let's go right to it.
In the 8th inning and left 2 on. He has had 1 for 4. A's want the double play to send us into the 11th. Oliver wants the hit to win it. That ball is fair. Cincinnati's ahead. 2 games to none.
Right over the bag, and it bounces on the line when it goes over the bag. I think it's safe to say that Tom Browning, you don't need to come to the ballpark.
And Bates scores the winning run in a 5-4 Cincinnati victory. They beat Stewart last night. Well started tonight, and they beat Eckersley. What are the odds of Cincinnati being 2-0?
I can't describe it. I came up earlier in the game with a chance to win it, and I went up there this time. I didn't want to lose it. I want to go up there and try to get the big hit.
You know, what else gets lost?
Josh, that's so close. That's right down the line, maybe grabbing the last inch or so of the chalk. Hawkeye in tennis would be happy to show everybody that call.
And once again, they beat Dave Stewart, the A's ace. They beat Bob Welch, who had won 27 games and was the Cy Young Award winner. And then they beat the Eck in extra innings. And I think I can speak on behalf of all Oakland A's fans when I say 1990 was way more painful than 1988. Because 88, you knew how great Oral Hershiser was. There was this incredible theatrical home run from Kirk Gibson. But then the A's come back and they win it in 89. They're the best team in baseball, but you don't get to celebrate properly because of the earthquake. There was no parade. 1990 was the year, Jesse, that from start to finish, the A's were the baddest team in baseball. They beat the Yankees all 12 times they played. They had Ricky Henderson for the entire season. Jose Canseco was healthy and dominant. Even his twin, Ozzie Canseco, was on the team and had some hits. The A's were the toast of baseball the entire year, and this was finally going to be the year that A's fans could celebrate a World Series properly. They could win it at home. They could have a parade. It just seemed like it was you could not stop them. And then it was one thing when Eric Davis hits a home run. It's another thing when Joe Oliver and Billy Bates is scoring this run and Billy Hatcher keeps on getting these hits. That was more painful 1990 than 1988. This is Crafting the Call, and we're supposed to be breaking down the calls of commentators, which we will. But first, I need to get over some 1990s angst.
Especially it's game 2. Okay, so you've lost game 1, but it's in Cincinnati. So you win game 2. It's a 1-1 series going back to Oakland, and you can close them out there. And so it's that close to, let's go to the 11th inning. Right, Eck finishes off Oliver. We get out of this 10th inning. We go to the 11th, figure out a way. We beat them here. We're going back to Oakland feeling good about ourselves.
Even in that last clip, I think that Jack Buck and Tim McCarver are excellent there. First of all, the way that Jack sets up. A's are looking for a double play to go on to the 11th inning. Reds are looking for a hit to win it right here. And then even the way that Jack just breaks it down. They beat Stewart, and then Welch started today. And they've beaten Eckersley. Who would have thought that they would be up 2-0? The A's were overwhelming, prohibitive favorites. And I think that's just a great quick summation from Jack Buck, who at the time was doing his first World Series on television that year. And just a really good snapshot of like, this is how stunned we were in 1990 after game 2 and why.
There's one more clip I want to show you from the 1990 World Series.
Is it me yelling at a fan?
It is the metaphorical Josh Suchon spirit shattering.
I mentioned it before. This fella has a tremendous physique. He's built more like a football player than a baseball player.
That's an example.
That's how strong he is, folks.
Holy cow. What is going on here?
Have you ever seen that before?
No.
I never have.
What is going on
I have
here?
never seen that before. He swung and missed and broke the bat.
We kiddingly talk about it. He's built more like Fort Bragg's. Now look at this. It hits his bat back and breaks him too.
That's what did it when he hit his back.
Yeah, you've seen Bo Jackson do that over his head, over his knee. How about his back? We've never seen Bo do that. Maybe Bo doesn't know. Oh, my gosh. Oh.
I still don't think, Jesse, that I've ever seen that since then.
Okay, I'm going to give you a hypothesis. I think the handle was trimmed too narrow. If you look back at certain bats, the handles are very skinny, so of course they're fragile. That's my scientific theory. This is a great call to a wild moment.
I recall Jose Canseco in the 80s and 90s. He would be shaving down his bat so that it'd be a thinner handle.
Was a fad.
This was definitely a fad. But how about the preview for Jack Buck of saying, like, of all of the times throughout 4 games of a World Series and all of the at-bats for Glenn Braggs, that this is going to be the one time that he mentions his physique, that he's a physical specimen. And then right on cue, the next pitch is when he breaks his bat on his back. Wild.
It's so good, especially Jack and Tim working together, right? Tim just reacting to it. Jack describes it, and then the two of them experience it together. This is a moment that if you're sitting at home, you are feeling the exact same thing. That's wild. But to transition for you, so you just mentioned Jack Buck takes over TV play-by-play, network national television, which sets up the 1991 World Series.
So you're telling me we don't have to watch the end of the 1990 World Series?
No, we're moving on.
Yes. Thank you.
1991. We'll see you tomorrow night. That's not what I want to show you today. Is there another moment that you think about with 1991?
Yeah, I think about Lonnie Smith's base running mistake.
Yes.
That led Game 7 of the World Series to get to extra innings. I just think about the great duel of John Smoltz and Jack Morris. And whenever we listen to the postseason and John Smoltz is a commentator now, to me, it constantly reminds me of how much baseball has changed from where these two guys went 9 innings and then Jack Morris went to the 10th inning. And now we have starters where you're happy if you get 5 out of them. And sometimes we have bullpen games. But yes, what a duel. And that's what you think of, Jesse, is the duel. And you think of Kirby Puckett's home run. But that's not how it ended.
Well, a walk-off to end Game 7 in a 1-0 win. Let's get right to what won the championship for the Minnesota Twins.
The Minnesota bench hoping to get this winning run across here in the 10th. It's carried by Dan Gladden III. Base hit loaded, 1 out. Infielders are sort of halfway at second and short. Pena in a jam. The Twins are going to win the World Series. The Twins have won it. It's a base hit. It's a 1-0 10-inning victory.
With the outfield in, the high pass ball from Alejandro Pena to Gene Larkin.
I'll admit, I'm not a huge fan of that. The Twins are going to win the World Series just a few seconds before it actually is official. There's just something about that. I've done something like that myself. You know, the Isotopes are going to win this game, or this is about to happen. And when I listen to somebody else say it, Jesse, what I think to myself is just wait 3 seconds. Say something else to build it up, and then say, the Isotopes have won the game, or the Twins have won the World Series, and kind of make it a little bit more dramatic in that way. My second thought is how different Jack's call is here compared to his call when we did the Eckersley versus Gibson home run in 1988 when he was on radio, and how he just completely lays out for a long, long time, which was not always Jack's style, but he lays out for a long time. And then the cameraman finding Jack Morris in the dugout to get the iconic shot of him jumping out of the dugout and waving Dan Gladden home. And what a shot that the camera operator has there.
Yeah, I wrote down Jack's words, right? Because he comes back from the Twins are going to win the World Series with, it's a base hit. It's a 1-0 10-inning victory. And it's so interesting to me that was where his mind went. He goes into, okay, the Twins are going to win the World Series. Like he just said in 1990, the Reds are going to win Game 2. And then here are your quick details. All right, I'm done here. Watch these pictures.
It's almost like the reverse of how you would write it if you were a newspaper reporter.
Yes.
Right? You would say, here's a base hit. Here's a run scoring. Here's the final. This team has won the World Series. And he almost does it in backward fashion there.
Well, and imagine a Vin Scully, or imagine someone like that, a wordsmith who's ready to sum this all up. This is 1991, and this is the worst to first World Series, right? Mm-hmm. The Braves were in last, the Twins were in last. Shockingly, they are meeting up to play for the championship, which goes 7 games, with the home team winning all 7. And in Game 7, it's 0-0 in the 10th. There is so much that you can say right here. We don't happen to have Vin Scully's call, do we?
Maybe.
I wonder what Vin would say.
Larkin, the left-hand hitter up there, bases loaded, 1 out, and the game on the line. Pena, right foot on the rubber. You can taste the pressure here in the dome as Alejandro straightens up. And the pitch to Larkin. Swung on a high fly ball into left center. The run will score. The ball will bounce for a single. And the Minnesota Twins are the champions of the world.
The run will score. The ball will bounce.
I love the line. You can taste the pressure here inside the dome. That's a fabulous line that sets up that pitch. That's why he's Vin.
Yeah. In Minnesota, Gene Larkin's going to be a hero forever. I just don't know if when other folks think back to 1981, you remember Kirby Puckett, you remember John Smoltz, you remember Jack Morris above all else. There was a wild double play. You remember Lonnie Smith. Gene Larkin, walk-off hero, Game 7. Pretty awesome.
And that's one of the things that makes baseball so unique is you have these guys, whether it's Mookie Wilson or Gene Larkin or Joe Oliver, who end up in the moment because that's how baseball works. You can't just keep sending Tom Brady to the plate. You have to keep going with different guys. And I think that's where these sort of unknown guys, where you say Gene Larkin and you immediately just think 1991 World Series walk-off. I don't know anything else that he did in his career. That's the only thing I know about Gene Larkin.
1992, we've got a couple more of these guys. The Braves were back. They took on the Toronto Blue Jays, who'd been knocking on the door, and yet the Oakland A's kept on slamming that door shut on them. Well, now the Blue Jays are there. They battled through the Tigers. They battled through the A's. They're finally in the World Series. They're trying to bring Canada its first title. What do you think about with 92?
First thing is actually just that there's a World Series that's being played in Canada. I think about that, and I think about how the Atlanta Braves are starting to become the Buffalo Bills of baseball, how they keep getting there, and they keep not winning it all.
Yeah. Well,
and will they ever break through? Will this be the year that they ever break through? Will this be the year that they break through?
Spoiler, 1992, no.
Here's Dave Justice, left-handed hitter. The pitch to him, fly ball center field. Back goes Devon White. It's hit deep. He's still running back at the wall, jumps and picks it off the wall. Sanders. There's a throw to first. The runner is out. The throw to third. They have a chance for a triple play. Gruber runs for Sanders, tags him. No, he missed him. The Blue Jays had a chance for a triple play. And Kelly Gruber elected to run Sanders back to the bag and almost tagged him, clipping him in the heels. The reason why Pendleton was out, he passed Sanders on the base path. So the Blue Jays started off with a miraculous catch, a backhanded catch by Devon White on the wall as he jumped and picked it off the wall. And Pendleton ran by Sanders. He was out by the rule book. That was 2, and they almost pulled off the triple play. And Gruber looked like on the replay as if he dove and did catch Sanders on the heel before he got to the bag.
This is a triple play. This is Jerry Howarth, by the way, on the call.
I think his initial call is pretty good, but I think his summation is fantastic. And again, the camera operator being in the right moment so that we see, yes, indeed, Pendleton passed Deion Sanders. Great work by the camera operator. And I think that, again, Jerry's second summation of what happened, I think, was outstanding.
Do you know what I wonder if he got twisted up briefly there is he's probably seeing an umpire calling out, and yet he's watching a play being made at first base. So he's trying to get that all straightened out in his head. It's such a great recovery to say there's a chance for a triple play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's so many things that are happening in this moment. Starting with the amazing catch by Devon White, which makes me think another thing about 1992 World Series that I think of is just the study and contrasts. So back when the American League and National Leagues, before interleague play, You had real grass in Atlanta. You had turf in Toronto. You had outdoors, indoors. You had Canada. You had United States, right? And so that's like the study and contrast. That's what makes boxing great. That's what makes World Series so great when you have those. Devon White, man, what an unbelievable center fielder he was. And that catch to start, that was an enormous moment in this World Series, Jesse.
Okay, so this is game 3. And in game 3, the Blue Jays, in fact, walk off the Braves in the bottom of the 9th inning. I want to go back earlier in the series, though, Josh. So game 1, this is one of my favorite trivia questions. Jack Morris starts Game 7, 1991 World Series representing the American League. He starts Game 1, 1992 World Series American League. He's gone from the Twins to the Blue Jays, and Tom Glavine beats him. The Braves get their rematch. They get their revenge, and we head into Game 2. It's in Atlanta, and the Braves are in the 9th inning, and they are moments away from going up 2-0, going back to Toronto. Now, there's some controversy. They have hoisted the flag of Canada upside down at the start of the night, a gigantic national insult. And in the 9th inning, the Blue Jays trying to mount the rally. And remember, we talked about players and their place in terms of baseball history. Ed Sprague had a lovely career, and now he is the farm director for the A's. Ed Sprague is sent up to pinch hit for the Blue Jays. 9th inning, Game 2, down by a run.
Well hit to left field. To the wall, Deion Sanders. Home run, Ed Sprague. Off the bench with a pinch hit 2-run homer off Jeff Reardon to give the Toronto Blue Jays a 5-4 lead.
That is the first pinch homer for the Blue Jays this year. And is it ever a big one? Wow.
Sean McDonough on the call. This is year 3 for CBS. After Jack Buck was the lead play-by-play announcer for 2 years, they made the switch to Sean McDonough. Sean McDonough, a more traditional call there. I've always really liked Sean McDonough's voice, his calls, and Tim McCarver just continuing to be the analyst, and this is the prime peak. You mentioned, Jesse, about how Jack Morris goes from one team to another. It seemed like Jeff Reardon was in the World Series every year with a different team. He's the closer for the Braves. No, he's the closer for the Twins, right? He went back and forth between those two teams. And what a moment for Ed Sprague, and how much that home run totally changed that series.
Yes. I also think at this time with Reardon, with closers in particular, the position had mystique because this was a relatively new role per se. And when you had the rise of Eck in the late 80s, and suddenly every team was trying to find their own unbeatable closer. And here's Rick Aguilera. Here's the Nasty Boys. Here comes Bobby Thigpen for the White Sox. It's fun for a team to go, here's our guy. And there wasn't much of this with the closer getting beaten in the postseason just because it hadn't happened. I would also argue this. In general, the delineated roles for play-by-play and color, Josh. The play-by-play guy gives the stat, or the stat flashes up in Chiron. It's Tim McCarver sharing that wild stat about this being the Blue Jays' first pinch homer all year.
It's all about these defining moments in World Series, and especially the things that you don't expect. You don't expect a pinch hit home run. You don't expect it from Ed Sprague. You don't expect Jeff Reardon to give up a home run at this moment. And that's where baseball's tension comes in. Yes, there's times that baseball's boring, Jesse. There's times that there's not a whole lot that's going on. You get rewarded for your patience in baseball when you get to moments like this and you just go, oh my goodness, what just happened?
Yeah. Well, Jack Buck was primed 1990 into 1991. I would argue Sean McDonough is primed in terms of calling a big Blue Jays homer from 1992 into 1993. 1993 World Series. It seems pretty obvious what the defining moment should be, right?
Yes, absolutely. There's no sense in making this very dramatic. Let's get to perhaps the most defining moment of the entire 1990s when it comes to World Series.
Is in that kind of a situation right here. 2-1 pitch swung on and missed, and it's 2 balls and 2 strikes on Joe Carter. Joe has had his moments trying to lay off that ball, low to the outside part of the plate, and he just went after one. 2 balls and 2 strikes on it. Here's the pitch on the way, a swing and a belt, left field, way back, Blue Jays win it! The Blue Jays are World Series champions as Joe Carter hits a 3-run home run in the 9th inning, and the Blue Jays have repeated as World Series champions. Touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger home run in your life. It is a mob scene over in front of the Philadelphia dugout. The fireworks exploding. The Blue Jays have mobbed Joe Carter. He's somewhere under the big pileup. He hits a 3-run home run, and for the 19th time and the first time since 1978, Major League Baseball has a repeat World Series champion, and it's your Toronto Blue Jays. They defeat the Phillies 8-6 on Joe Carter's 3-run home run in the bottom of the 9th. You will not find anything more dramatic than what we just witnessed here in this ballpark. On a 2-2 pitch, Joe Carter screamed a line drive home run into the left field bullpen. And the Blue Jays, as Joe Carter is lifted aloft by his teammates, have made the journey all the way back as repeat World Series champions. In this year in which the club was reworked, retooled, in this year, as we mentioned before, that we said goodbye to old friends and old teammates for the guys down there on the field. In this year when young kids made their move to the big leagues, young arms like Pat Henkin, a young outfielder, Toronto-born Rob Butler, and others coming into the mix, if you will. The Blue Jays, who did not find it an easy journey this year because of sometimes suspect pitching, but Cito Gaston, who never seems to get his due, patchworked it all together. He made it all come out on the bottom line with a World Series championship here tonight. And it's an old standby, Joe Carter, who so many times over the years has pulled the trigger in key moments of ball games, but none bigger than this tonight. Hits it into the left field bullpen, and the Blue Jays are World Series champions once again.
That, to my mind, is the biggest swing of the 90s.
I would agree with that. I've probably heard that phrase, touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger homer in your life, hundreds of times. And every time it makes me smile because I think it's just such a beautiful phrase.
Yeah, it's honest. It's so honest. And then Tom Cheek, with his beautiful voice, summing it all up. With respect to Sean McDonough, we did a whole show on this moment, and I think that Sean called it great. That's the 1993 World Series in a nutshell. And there's the Phillies closer whom they had written, and then it imploded in Wild Thing Mitch Williams. Well, they wrote him down into flames all the way to the very end. And then in 1994, there was no World Series.
And so there's always a question of how will fans respond when there is no World Series? There was a lot of backlash, Jesse. We needed Cal Ripken Jr. to save baseball, if you will. And then it's time to once again get back to the World Series in 1995.
Did you have a moment from 1995 that stood out to you?
From that overall playoff series?
Yes.
So in 1995, I watched most of those games from the CBS affiliate in San Diego. So when you said that question, I thought about what was I doing? So I was interning at the CBS affiliate. And so I was inside the studio and I was logging. These are the exact moments that things are happening so that we can put together the highlights. And so when I think about that World Series, I think about me taking meticulous notes. What's the exact timestamp that this is happening so that we can make these decisions about what we're going to put in our 90 seconds or whatever it is. So really for me, I think this was my first taste of not just watching a World Series as a fan, but really watching it with an eye on how are we going to package this? And so then you get to game 6. And I remember having these discussions inside the newsroom about, okay, what are the images that we want to show if the World Series ends tonight?
There's great parallelism to me that the Braves lost a World Series 1-0. And that in 1995, they win the World Series with a 1-0 game. Dave Justice, who has been robbed by Devon White for one of the great web gems in World Series history, that it's Dave Justice right at the center of it all here in 1995. If you don't mind, roll it.
1-1 pitch. A long drive to right. Ramirez turns to the track. She's gone. Dave Justice, all is forgiven in Atlanta.
Bob, it's okay to talk the talk if you can walk the walk.
All is forgiven in Atlanta for Dave Justice. Bob Costas with the call there. Fill us in on why all was forgiven, Jesse.
So big thanks to Battery Power and the writer of this piece, Daryl Palmer 4, as opposed to any other Daryl Palmers. That morning, there was an article written in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I.J. Rosenberg was the beat writer, and he quoted David Justice as saying, with the headline, "Justice takes a rip at Braves fans. What happens if we don't win? When's the parade then? They'll run us out of Atlanta. If we don't win, they'll probably burn our houses down. We've got to win. And if we win, it's for the 25 guys in here, the coaches and Bobby. It is for us. Like the song Against the World. It's us against the world. I'm the only guy that will sit here and say it, but there are a lot of people that feel this way. If we get down 1-0 tonight, they will probably boo us out of the stadium." And then, a line that people probably didn't look at closely at the time, but later it rings very differently. You have to do something great to get them out of their seats. Well, continuing on, quoting, a number of Braves teammates, including Tom Glavine and Steve Avery, tried to refute Justice's words, but the damage had been done. Justice was public enemy number 1 heading into Game 6. NBC made Justice's rant a major part of its Game 6 coverage, with Jim Gray conducting an interview with Justice prior to the game, and Bob Costas, Joe Morgan, and Bob Uecker making numerous references to it during the broadcast. Braves fans booed Justice during pregame introductions, and when he came up to bat leading off the bottom of the second, one fan held up a sign that read, "Justice, hope your bat is as big as your mouth." So the answer is yes.
As a former newspaper reporter turned broadcaster, I love it all. I love the drama. I love that he got the quotes and printed them. Friendly reminder that the newspaper headlines are written by someone, not the reporter, right?
The editor.
Right, the editor, right? I love that NBC made this a big part of its pregame show. That's what you should do. I always find it fascinating when a player takes a shot at his own fans and how those fans respond, right? And bringing these signs and booing him and all of that. This also goes to show the angst of the Atlanta Braves, right? 91, they lose the World Series. 92, they lose the World Series. 93, they lose in the championship series to the Phillies. 94, there is no World Series. There was a lot of anger. The Braves have already at this point been the best team in baseball now for 5 straight years, and they still don't have a World Series. And that's when you can feel the pressure is mounting, Jesse, as they get back home. Although it is curious timing. They led 3-2. They've got 6 and 7 at home. And on an off day, that's when Dave Justice decides to go after the fans. But again, that goes to show the angst that was there for everyone.
I mean, you said it. They had led 3-1. They lost game 5 in Cleveland to Oral Hershiser, who beat Greg Maddux. But there is that worry. You can imagine sports talk shows being like, who has more pressure on them, Cleveland or Atlanta? And everyone going, well, it's Atlanta, because if they lose, they're going to choke game 7. And they don't. And this game is great. This is a wonderful game 6. The pitcher's duel was awesome. Tom Glavine was fantastic in this World Series, like throughout his postseason career. He goes 8 one-hit innings. The Braves win a one-hitter. El Presidente Dennis Martinez starts for Cleveland. Jim Poole, the lefty, the journeyman specialist of sorts, relieves him, allows the homer. After that, the Braves only get 1 hit the rest of the way. Cleveland's bullpen is locked down. And that's it. It's 1-0 to win the World Series. And let me finish off with this quote. After the game, Tim Kirkjian talking to David Justice. Justice said that he spent time alone before game 6 to clear my mind, quoting him, "My head hurt, my stomach hurt, and all I could think about was going out on the field and getting booed by 50,000 fans. I really don't know how I got through today. The pressure was unbearable." So he created the pressure, and then he dealt with the pressure, and he won the World Series, in addition to that great pitching. And the Braves finally had that Atlanta title.
These are the backstories that make October so special. It wasn't just that Reggie Jackson hit 3 home runs. It was that he was feuding with Billy Martin throughout the entire season, and that Billy Martin had benched him in the American League Championship Series. It's that type of drama, the quotes that people say before games and after games, and how all of that leads into the narrative that makes it so much fun. And that's where the backstories just make it so rich. And I think NBC, Costas, Joe Morgan, Jim Gray, an outstanding job of telling this story. Maybe they didn't create this story, but they're the ones who have to tell it for those of us who are not in Atlanta and did not buy that newspaper.
I do think connecting Jim Gray's name to it, right? If you say Jim Gray, people go, oh, the Pete Rose interview. Jim Gray was the reputation is combative reporter, asked the tough questions.
Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. So now
1996, the Braves go right back to the World Series. There's this young upstart team, then the New York Yankees, that's going to go face them. Yankees haven't been there in a while. It's all these newcomers. You don't know their names yet. What's your defining moment for 1996?
It's that the Braves can now start off their dynasty, right? That they've won one. Now they're right back there. Like you said, we don't know who these Yankees are, but really it's the next wave. Well, okay. my main memory of 1996 is actually Charlie Hayes catching the ball at the end of the World Series, and Wade Boggs is on a police horse because back then they wanted to make sure that the fans did not run on the field in New York. And so they brought police on horses, and Wade Boggs ended up on top of one of the horses. That's actually my defining moment, is Wade Boggs on a horse.
The defining moment of the Braves and the Braves' identity is this is the greatest pitching staff ever, arguably. So here's their great pitchers against the Yankees. But the Braves had a new secret weapon. The Braves farm system was constantly producing great talent. And in the 1996 World Series, the world got to meet a young center fielder from Curacao named Andruw Jones.
Long drive into left field. At the track, at the wall, it is gone. Andruw Jones, his second postseason home run, and it's 2-0 Braves in the second. Depending on this 3-2 pitch. Into left field. Well hit. Strawberry back at the wall. Another home run for Andruw Jones. A 2-run homer, a 3-run homer. And all of a sudden, it's 8-0 Atlanta here in the third. What a performance by the 19-year-old Andruw Jones.
That is now Joe Buck. That's his first World Series. Speaking of young, how much Joe Buck's voice has changed. I'm pretty sure he was still in his late 20s, Jesse, when he became the voice of Fox. This is the first year that Fox now has the World Series. So you have a 20-something-year-old Joe Buck on the mic. You have 19-year-old Andruw Jones at the plate hitting 2 home runs. How in the world would the Braves ever lose that World Series?
Well, not only that, the Yankees scored 1 run combined in game 1 and game 2 against Smoltz and Maddox. So they were not in the World Series for the first 2 games at Yankee Stadium. And now the series is shifting to Atlanta. And yes, the Braves pitching is too much. The Braves hitting is too much. Jones is a sensation. It's over. Except it was over in a different way because the Yankees won the next 4 games.
That was such, to me, that's one of the wildest turnarounds. I remember that Greg Maddux had his best postseason game. I think it was game 2, and he only needed like 80-something pitches to go the distance. And again, it's just one of those times you just think there is just no way in the world that the Braves can lose this World Series. They lead 2-0. They're going back home. They're the defending champs. They have the greatest pitching staff that's ever been assembled. And yet the Yankees found a way to win 3 in Atlanta and then win it back home in New York. Wild.
Yeah. So much fun. This is what restarted the Yankee dynasty. And instead of there being a Braves dynasty with back-to-back championships, it didn't work out.
The thing about the 90s that I find so much fun, Jesse, too, is that there was a stretch there where, look, either the A's won in 4 or 5 or they lost in 4 or 5, right? Like those A's, 3 straight teams, 88, 89, 90, no series ever went 6 games, and definitely no series went 7 games. And now you just start to get into these big dramatic series. It's a walk-off in game 7. It's a walk-off in game 6. You have Dave Justice with the go-ahead home run in game 6. We have the Yankees coming back from a 2-0 deficit. We just had year after year after year where it was dramatic moments late in games, dramatic series that go the distance or close to the distance. It was so much fun, these World Series in the 90s.
Let me add one more of those dramatic moments for you in the 1996 World Series. Are you ready?
Yes.
Jermaine Dye plays very deep. They're trying to cut off the extra base hit, but anything in front of Dye probably falls in, and he's playing right near the right field line. Grissom is a little bit over in right center, and Andruw Jones way off the left field line. Understandably, they don't think the Yanks can pull Wohlers. It'll be a 2-2. Swung on and hit in the air to deep left. Jones back toward the track, at the wall. It is gone! A 3-run home run, and the Yankees have tied the game. Jimmy Leyritz did pull Wohlers, and he hit a 3-run home run over the left field fence. And the gritty Yankees have come all the way back. 6-0 down to tie the game at 6. Do you believe that?
That's pretty amazing. Leyritz hit the most dramatic home run last year, the one that won it in the 15th inning in Game 2 in the division series. And this one, it reminded me a lot of the Pat Kelly home run in Toronto. It kept going down the line, and it finally cleared the fence over the leaping Tribe Jones. And the amazing thing, John, Wohlers hung a breaking ball.
And they say, I mean, this is part of baseball lore. Go with your fastball. You can't hang a fastball. He hung a breaking ball in Leyritz's eyes. Jones climbed the wall, but it was just over the wall. An ultra-dramatic 3-run home run by a guy who's only in the game because the Yankees pinch hit for Girardi, something they never do. They needed a 3-run home run at the time. So Leyritz is in the game, and he hoists a 3-run home run to deep left. It was pulled to the line. That's the only ball he could hit and pull, a hanging breaking ball. He pulled it. Andruw Jones, you see him climb that wall? I mean, he even got close to it. A dramatic 3-run home run to tie the game at 6. How do you like your New York Yankees?
The gutty, gritty New York Yankees, which is a line that I've heard parodied for years after that. There's been so much lasting impact from this, because this is what I think of with the whole adage, don't get beat by your lesser pitch. Go out on your fastball. Wohlers got beat with his slider. Jones coming so close. The Braves are up 6-0. Even if they protect the 6-3 lead, they're going to lead the Yanks in this series 3-1. And this is why Jim Leyritz is nicknamed the King.
Jim Leyritz just seemed like one of those guys that when he came to the plate in the regular season, you're like, this is an easy out. And then when he came to the plate in the postseason, you just thought he's going to hit a home run, because he had so many of these dramatic hits and home runs. And he was the guy you wanted to acquire at the trading deadline, right? And add him to your team, because he would find a way to get one of these big hits. What a moment there. What an absolute moment there. And I think that John Sterling and Michael Kay are fantastic on this description of everything. The way that Sterling was setting up the defense reminded me, that's right, Andruw Jones played left field. He was not always a center fielder, right? And it also goes to show how much baseball has changed, because nowadays, Jesse, the whole point is you don't throw fastballs, right? You keep throwing Juan Soto breaking ball, changeup, right? You throw people everything but a fastball. But back in 1996, it was don't get beat with your breaking ball. Only throw fastballs, and how much baseball has changed.
Juan Soto homered off of Hunter Gaddis, and it was a fastball that was above the zone after this long at bat. And there was this excoriation of Gaddis. Well, you couldn't give him a fastball. I'm sorry. You can't give a guy an elevated fastball. What world are we living in? Tip your cap to one of the all-time great hitters. By the way, you talking about postseason batters like that with Jim Leyritz? That's Kike Hernandez, right? Don't mess with Kike in the postseason. Yeah, but this goes right along with what you were saying earlier in terms of these huge swings late, marking the 1990s.
Well, let's get to next year, because it continued.
1997 World Series. No Braves, no Yankees, none of these teams that we go, okay, here comes the dominating team coming in. No, welcome to the expansion Marlins. And opposing them, here's Cleveland, which has been rising up and putting together a really strong program. We saw the Braves beat them in 1995, but Cleveland is back. To my mind, there's a defining moment, but how about you for the 97 World Series?
To me, what I think about in 1997 is it felt like it was the series that was never going to end.
Yeah.
It went 7 innings. It went 7 games. Then it went extra innings, right? And it was like the baseball season refuses to end. And I loved it. I remember watching this game on the couch at home in my apartment in California and just thinking, like, I don't want either team to win. I want 10 innings, 11 innings, 12 innings. Like, I don't want this game. I don't want this series. I don't want this season to ever end. And it was one of the rare times that I was actually disappointed in a dramatic ending, because I was like, no, I want more baseball.
Well, I remember just like Jones coming in and setting the world on fire for the Braves. I remember being electrified by Jarrett Wright, what he was doing. There were some brand new stars that felt like were being made on the stage, all the while the Marlins had all these old pros that they had paid for. And so it was this all-star collection of free agents. And then there was Édgar Rentería. And so let's get into how the 97 World Series came to a close.
The 0-1 pitch. A liner off Nagy's glove into center field. The Florida Marlins have won the World Series. and Teal are for real.
We talked about how good a player Édgar Rentería was going to be and how much he's shown us in this series. That is the 6th time this year that he has driven in the winning run in this type of situation.
And then they got rid of everybody.
Watching that just makes me think of just like what could have been for Miami, what could have been for baseball in South Florida if they just could have kept that team together. I think about the shot of Livan Hernandez. To me, that's one of the big moments of 1997 was the huge strike zone that Eric Gray gave him as they beat the Braves in order to get there. Oh, rest in peace, Eric Gray, in your strike zone that day. But also just, okay, we had seen El Duque and now we see his brother, Livan Hernandez. And again, I just think about like what could be for South Florida if that team had been able to stay together. I think that to go to the play-by-play aspect, I think it's a very understated call from Costas. He quickly just describes it. He lays out for a really long time. I kept waiting for him to come back with the great secondary summation, right? And it was just really brief. The men in teal are for real. And I'm actually surprised with what a gifted wordsmith Bob Costas is, that maybe there was something else after the clip ended there, because I just kept waiting for, okay, this is when Costas shines in these moments.
Well, and he drew himself back. And even the line drive, he's right on it. And he's right on that the ball just gets through Charles Nagy. And he's right on the Florida Marlins. And then he drops down for Are the World Champions. He draws himself back for that big moment. Mm-hmm. And then he's so understated for the men in teal are for real. That could be a lot bigger than he delivers it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Let's compare and contrast how somebody else who we hear frequently in October called the same play.
Wait, before we do, to my mind, Jim Leland, the visuals of Jim Leland just steal the show there. Yeah, it's all about Jim. All right. Who else we got for this one call?
A lot of nail biting now as Nagy comes back, and there's a line drive behind second base. They hit, and the Marlins have won it. And they are crazy at Pro Player Park. Édgar Rentería, a line drive base hit to center field, and the Marlins, the first expansion team to win a championship. They did it in 5 years. The Mets took 8, and the Marlins came in here as a wild card to win it all.
Yeah, the wild card winning the championship.
This is the first time I've ever heard this call from Vin, and I think it's a good reminder for me and from others when we think about Vin Scully's greatness in terms of it wasn't just what he did with the Dodgers, it wasn't just what he did on NBC, but it's how often he was there for CBS radio, the national radio call. And it's the first time I've ever heard this, and it just goes to show like just how Vin was just always there and always on it. This is a tough call. Now that we've watched it and listened to it twice, you think about all the different elements. Is this caught? If it's not caught, is somebody still going to field it, right? We hear Scully saying behind the bag. That's one of Scully's favorite phrases, behind the bag. And now he realizes it's a base hit. Here's the moment. They've won the World Series. I love that Vin came in with the expansion team and how quickly they have won a World Series, because that becomes the big story there too.
About this sort of play, this has flummoxed me, and I've talked to my broadcast partners about this over the years. Off the bat, it's a line drive, but the ball bounces before it leaves the infield. And so an infielder, if they're able to range back of second, which you and I have seen infielders do, and then you pick it on a hop, it feels weird to say line drive, grabbed on the first hop by the shortstop. Wait a second. So is it now a grounder? Is it a one hopper? Because it is dying. It is shot beyond the pitcher, but how to describe a ball off the bat like this that is not going to hit the outfield grass in the air?
Now that you mention that, yeah, it's really tough. And I know there's a lot of times in my career, Jesse, where I've said line drive and then I'm saying on the ground. I'm like, wait a minute, which one was it, Josh? Well, it was both. It was a line drive and now it's on the ground, a tough call to make. under any circumstances. And my first reaction, well, how do we call this, is to be like a half second behind to kind of give yourself a little bit of a cheat, but that's tough to do. I try to be like right there in that moment, and that's tough to give yourself like that half second, borderline on full second so you can get it. It's just, these are the moments that basically, this is why we do 140 something games every year in the minor leagues, just to practice and practice and practice so that when we get to the moment, hopefully we nail it.
I have a different philosophy from Vin, Bob, Jack Buck. When there's a walk-off, I like to name the runner scoring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like to say, in whatever words that we want to use, this player scores. Dan Gladden scores. And then we can get right into they are the champions. And I've noticed that with Jack, with Bob, with Vin, etc., that we don't really talk about that run scoring. It's immediately they're the champs.
It's a tough thing for your brain to think about too, because once you see the ball has gotten through, the mind just goes to World Series champions.
Yeah.
But I like that you bring this up because I think it is an important detail. And I think that's what the image shows too on television. We are seeing the player touch home. I like giving the name. Yes, that's an excellent point, Jesse.
Well, and it's special. This is special that Édgar Rentería is the walk-off winner, that he supplies the base hit, just like it was that Gene Larkin did. But it's really special who scores the game-winning run. The World Series winning run, that runner matters. That is, whether you want to call it trivia, for them, for the moment, for all of this, who they are is a name that should be said and remembered. So this is 1997, and we have had another time in this decade of the 1990s, a Game 7 walk-off winner in extra innings, no less. So this is great. Let's roll into 1998, where things get less competitive.
True to form, and it's ripped into deep left center field. At the track, at the wall, it's gone. The 3-2 fastball. Brocious knew it, and he goes deep to make it a 2-run game. It's 3-1. Well, you always hear it. That's preferable to a leadoff walk. Here, hit it, and Brocious just knew what was coming and did his thing.
That home run didn't come on a 3-2 pitch. I mean, actually it did. But what lost Scott Brocious was that 2-2 curveball. Catchers and pitchers are trained to throw the pitch that the pitcher gets over most on a 2-2 count, so you don't get in a position like this. You miss with a curve, now you've got to throw the fastball.
Brian Cashman, the general manager of the Yankees, with the thumbs up. Now the 2-2 to Brocious. Into center field, well hit. Finley back at the track. 3-run home run for Scott Brocious. And just like that, the Yankees take a 5-3 eighth inning lead.
Staggering.
Brian Cashman, the Yankee general manager, trying his hardest not to root. The Yankee bench reaction as New York has taken the lead here by 2 in the 8th. Scott Brocious continues to stun.
Ferocious Brocious. And I think we go back to some themes here again. If you're going to win a World Series, you got to beat the other team's closer, and how often these mostly unknown players end up with these dramatic hits in postseason games.
What I remember most was Stephen Lee hitting the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Just that bang of Finley running into the wall and this punctuating this home run. How many times before this do you remember the camera constantly finding the general manager?
Very rarely. Very rarely. Goes to show how long Brian Cashman's been the GM, how young he was. There must have been some storyline that was going on in terms of Brian Cashman of why they would keep showing him.
So here are the Yankees, and here's Joe Buck, and this call, and I'm going to relate Tim McCarver into this too. This is a foot on the gas for Joe Buck. He does not hesitate in going right from the home run into it's 3-1, right? Joe is pushing forward. There's no waiting. This pace is up tempo, and you can feel everything about Joe is edge of his seat, which I think extends to Tim McCarver. We've heard from Tim before with other play-by-play broadcasters. Things are relaxed and he's smiling and he's having a good time. And Tim right here is forcing his words and being rushed, and you can feel how urgently everything is getting delivered.
I think this was a postseason in which Fox's production values really started to shine through. You mentioned we hear Steve Finley run into a wall. That's because they put a camera there.
Oh, it's so good.
Right? I believe this was the World Series where they put a camera near bases so that when somebody slid into the base, you would hear the dirt moving. And I think that Fox just elevated the overall production to the point that we now take it for granted. But this is a good reminder that it wasn't always like that. And like you hear how loud San Diego is here. And I miss the Murph and the palm trees. But also, I think that going back to what you said about Joe Buck and how his fastball is on there, right? And it's also because you kind of have to, right? Because the crowd is so loud and we're hearing players bounce off walls. And I think that his voice rises to the moment in that occasion.
What made the Yankees so powerful as we get here to the end of the 1990s is their hitters stole your soul. Mm-hmm. They beat your best, but you couldn't beat their best. Let's roll right into 99 as they do it again. The Braves try to step up once again at the very end of the decade, the last gasp of the 1990s Atlanta Braves. And this is not a close World Series when it comes to a long World Series.
The eighth inning has been the Yankees' inning, and they have an opportunity to get back in this game or at least tie it here in the eighth inning.
In the air to right, Jordan going back to the track, to the wall, and he cannot come up with it. It's a tie ball game. A home run by about half an inch.
Well, we talked about decisions you have to make as a manager. And here we see the ball traveling well to right field. It actually looks like it hit off of his glove maybe, but he had such a bad angle to get to it that the ball bounces off and goes into the seats. Let's take a look here.
I think it hit the top of the wall.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it hit his glove. We'll have to take another look there.
Well, he was looking in it.
Yeah, he
might have gotten some leather on it.
That ball hit off his glove.
Well, it was both. Yeah, it hit his glove and then hit the top of the wall.
Such an awkward position for Jordan to make the catch on. He tries right there, and it hits off of his glove, and he can't bring it back.
Short porch.
Is it just me, or are the Yankees the only team that ever hits home runs to the short porch? When has a visiting team ever benefited from the short porch?
So the Yankees win the first two games of this World Series, but Tom Glavine is acing them. It's all going to be fine. The Braves are going to win in Yankee Stadium, and they're going to look to equalize the World Series, except Tom Glavine, who makes his living on the outside corner, goes outside corner, and in any other ballpark, Knobloch flies out. But he flied it out of Brian Jordan's glove, and now the Yankees are in position to win it.
Ramlinger deals the 1-1. Swung on a drill deep to left field. That could go. Williams back, looking up. See ya! A home run into the Braves bullpen in left center field. And the Yankees win the game 6-5. And they're one win away from baseball nirvana. Oh, what a home run for Chad Curtis. He rounds third. He heads home. And the entire Yankee team greets him at home plate. What a thrilling come from behind 6-5 Yankee win. Oh man, it doesn't get better than this.
And what's more, Yankees win. Everybody. Oh, Yankees win. Boy, are they mobbing Curtis. And Mike, when he swung the bat, his little fastball, the game was over. Of all the home runs hit tonight, that was by far the furthest. Curtis knew it right away. Here's a guy who never had a World Series hit, hits 2 homers, and one of them is a walk-off home run in the bottom of the 10th, and the Yankees win 6-5. They lead the series 3-0, and Mike, of all the Yankee wins in the World Series, save the Leyritz home run game. I think this is the most exciting, dramatic Yankee comeback. I guess that includes the first game against San Diego, but oh my goodness, it's an unbelievable win.
Great calls, Michael Kay and John Sterling there. The Yankees had so many moments there in the 90s that you could reference these. And I think that it's really good work there by Sterling to immediately just have his brain go through most dramatic home runs. There's the Leyritz game. There's the comeback against San Diego. There's this. And in my mind, Jesse, this is just the peak of Yankees mystique, that they're always going to find a way. It doesn't matter if it's Chuck Knobloch by an inch, if it's Chad Curtis hitting 2 home runs. Like, somebody for the Yankees, Jim Leyritz is going to hit a home run and they're going to find a way to win.
I think that's one of the great qualities of John Sterling has been his memory and his ability to connect the present to the past. We should mention with Chad Curtis, right? After his playing career, found guilty on criminal sexual conduct, things became ugly character-wise. This is the decade of the 1990s, when you go from the A's going down at the hand of the upstart Reds to the Yankees establishing their supremacy. And you could even say this is where it's peaking, 1998, 1999, 2000. I mean, as we talked about the technology changing, the voices of baseball changing, and the faces of baseball changing. But it stayed dramatic the whole way through.
At the beginning of the decade, we did not have the score bug that constantly told you what the score was.
Oh, good point.
By the end of the decade, we take for granted now that there is this, right? We went from Jack Buck to Sean McDonough to Joe Buck to Bob Costas, back to Joe Buck. We heard a lot of Tim McCarver. It was the Tim McCarver decade, right? No matter who was the network, they wanted Tim McCarver, unless it was NBC and they had Joe Morgan. But just so many dramatic home runs and just electricity in crowds and the work by camera operators. And this is also the time when you would not just see a replay, but you would see a replay from 4 different angles. Think about the number of different angles that we had of Knobloch's home run and how close Brian Jordan came to catching it. We take for granted now that we are going to see these plays from every single angle. It wasn't until the late 90s that we actually got to see it, Jesse.
So we talked about how in the 1980s, baseball was struggling with interest, right? Well, 1990s, you've got the strike wiping out a World Series in 1994. And could baseball recover? By the end of the decade, I think that the clear answer is yes. And it's booming. And interest is strong. And business is great.
You had the number 1 media market team that was winning, so that helps. And home runs, lots and lots of home runs. And we know what aided the home runs, especially in 1998 and on through, right? This is right, sort of the middle of the steroid era, right? 1999, right? And so this is when, let's face it, it was a really entertaining product.
Well, you start to contrast the bodies of everybody playing baseball at the start of the 90s to the end of the 90s. Glenn Bragg, and would his physique been, that different from the common baseball players by the end of the decade?
Yeah, he didn't stand out as much by 1999 as he did in 1990.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for taking a trip with me through the 1990s and the greatest World Series moments.
I love the 90s and love all these moments, and it was a thrill to think, even in my own mind, I didn't say it as much on this episode, but I think about this is where I was. I was in high school. I was in college. I was after college, the different places I remember watching these. And to me, it makes it fun when you go back and watch the moments and you think about where you were for those moments.
It's better now for me because at the time, the Yankees just kept on breaking my heart. Things have softened. Now I get to really enjoy it as a fan of baseball. October baseball, nothing better.
Well, this was a great episode, and let's get ready to watch more 2024 World Series baseball.
I love it. For Josh Suchon, the voice of the Albuquerque Isotopes, I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler with the Lansing Lugnuts, and this has been Crafting the Call.